The sound that stops the camp is not music, but a roar, metal beating metal, feet pounding dust, shouting that rolls up the slope like the start of a stampede. The sun is high over the Sinai ridge. When the people part, the figure at the center flashes like a second sun, a calf hammered smooth, overlaid with gold, standing on a rough altar of stones. Fires lick at offerings. Men dance with raised hands. Women sway, bracelets clacking. A sweet animal smell mixes with smoke and sweat. At the edge of the crowd, Aaron raises his arms for silence and cries that tomorrow will be a feast to the Lord. Tonight, he says, they celebrate. 40 days earlier, Moses had climbed that mountain into the cloud and fire. He took Joshua part way, then went on alone to meet the God who brought Israel out of Egypt. The camp below waited for a leader who did not return. Days stretched. Without Moses, the center loosened. People drifted to the tent of Aaron, the brother left in charge. They came in groups and pressed him hard. Make us gods to go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him. Aaron told them to bring the gold rings from their wives and sons and daughters. They piled bracelets and earrings in baskets. He melted the gold and cast it, then took tools and formed the metal into a calf. When the calf stood on its stone base, Aaron built an altar before it and named a festival. At dawn, the people brought offerings, ate and drank, and rose up to play, a phrase the text uses for revelry. A line formed at the altar. For the first time since the Red Sea, there was movement that did not require waiting. On the mountain, the news came like a verdict. The Lord told Moses what the people had done, turned quickly from the commands they had just received, made a calf, bowed to it, and called it the God that brought them out of Egypt. Anger burned hot. "Let me alone," God said, that he might consume them and make a new nation from Moses. Moses stood in the breach and argued for the lives below, for the promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, for God's name among the nations, for the memory that the Exodus would become. The text says, the Lord relented from the immediate disaster he had spoken. As he reached lower ground, Joshua heard the sound rising from the plain and said it was the noise of war. Moses listened and shook his head. Not the sound of victory, not the sound of defeat, the sound of singing. They rounded the slope and the camp opened before them, the calf glinting in the sun, the crowd circling, the altar hot and black with use. What Moses saw was a camp unraveling, people unrestrained, Aaron's authority spent, the line between feast and riot thin. Moses did not speak first. He acted. He lifted the stone tablets, written on both sides, the work of God, and smashed them against the rocks at the foot of the mountain. He went to the calf, threw it into the fire, and watched the gold soften and slump. When it was soft enough, he had it ground to powder, scattered the dust on the water, and made the people drink it. The idol that filled their impatience became grit in their teeth and a taste at the back of the throat. Only then did he turn to Aaron. "What did this people do to you?" Moses asked, "that you brought so great a sin upon them?" Aaron tried to shift the weight. "You know the people," he said. "They are set on evil. They asked for a god. I threw their gold into the fire, and this calf came out." Moses looked past the excuse to the camp. They needed a line and a cost. He stood at the gate and called, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." The sons of Levi gathered to him, the tribe that would later carry the tent and serve at the altar. Moses gave them a hard command that rings in the text: strap on swords, go back and forth through the camp, and strike. Order returned at a price. About 3,000 fell that day. The count sits bluntly in the record, a number, not a rumor. The rest of the people watched the swords pass and understood that the covenant they had agreed to at Sinai had a boundary that could cut. Moses told the Levites they had set themselves apart, and the text adds that in doing so, they were blessed for their loyalty, grim as the task had been. The next morning Moses told the people, "You have committed a great sin. Now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." He climbed again into the cloud. His prayer was as direct as a man can make it. "Forgive them, but if not, blot me out of the book you have written." The answer that came back drew a tight line. "Whoever sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Lead the people to the place I told you. My angel will go before you. In the day when I will visit their sin upon them." The camp moved on under that tension, judgment measured out in present time and in a future reckoning not yet detailed. Before they moved, there was one more blow. The text records that the Lord struck the people with a plague because of the calf that Aaron had made. The narrative does not count the sick or the dead here, only notes the consequence and leaves the details under the cloud that had covered the mountain. Between the swords and the sickness, the camp learned that the God who brought them out of Egypt had not softened on the first commandment while Moses was away. The aftermath shaped everything that followed. Moses pitched the tent of meeting outside the camp, and anyone who sought the Lord went there. When Moses entered, the people rose and watched. In that space, Moses spoke with God, face to face, as a man speaks to his friend, language that describes closeness, not sight. Elsewhere, the text says, "No one sees God's face and lives." Moses asked that the presence would go with them, that they would not be sent on alone. The answer was yes, because the favor on Moses rested on the people he led. Moses asked to see God's glory. He was told to stand in a cleft of rock. The Lord would pass by, covering him with a hand, and Moses would see the afterglow, not the face. When the covenant had to be renewed, Moses cut new tablets and climbed again. The Lord descended and proclaimed his name, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, yet by no means clearing the guilty. The people heard both halves and lived in the space between them. Commands were restated with emphasis that pressed close to the failure they had just lived through. Moses came down with the new tablets, his face shining from the time in the presence, and the camp stepped forward with a law restored and a memory that made the words land heavier than before. Every step after that carried the weight of the calf turned to dust in a cup. The tribe of Levi would be marked by the moment when they drew swords. Aaron would still bear the garments of the high priest, but his part in the making of the idol remained in the story like a scar. The people would build a sanctuary to the pattern Moses was given, not the pattern they chose while he was gone. When they moved through the wilderness, the memory traveled with ark and tent and the pillars of cloud and fire, a warning about what fills a vacuum when leadership is absent and patience runs out. Stand in that camp for a minute, and the details do not feel distant. Gold clinks into a basket. A craftsman's tools bite hot metal. Music rises from a circle, then fractures when the tablets smash and a shout cuts across the dust. Water tastes faintly bitter with ground gold. Levi men strap swords with steady hands. In one afternoon, a people who had watched a sea split learned how fast a center collapses when trust breaks and how hard it is to build one back. The story does not end with numbers. It ends with a rebuilt covenant and a people moving again under a presence that threatened to leave and then chose to stay. What held them was not the memory of the idol's shine, but the fact that a leader went up the mountain to argue for mercy and came back with terms they could live under, hard terms, but life. The chapter closes with work to do, a path to walk, and a warning set deep enough to survive memory. You can celebrate a thing you made, but it cannot save you when the ground shakes. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.